We're at Black Abbey Brewery.
It's a hard word.
Brewery. I like beer. Brewery.
Brewery.
Yeah. I feel like we should do like some like warm ups before like that.
Yes.
What do you do then? Tip of the tongue, the teeth. Yeah, I'm not very into that.
I don't do that. Yeah,
I just talk, but sometimes I don't talk well, so I probably should warm up.
Well, we have been talking, but I didn't do an official warm-up. But I wanted to invite you guys into the podcast as well as this project just because I think you guys are amazing people from what I can tell from a distance. I feel like I know you. I feel like I would call you friends, but I would say it's more of like an acquaintance of friends versus actually knowing your stories and where you're from, who you are, all those things. So with... what's going on in the world right now, I think that you guys have some really positive voices as well as you're vocal. So I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to have just another platform. I don't know how many people listen to this, whether it's 1 or it's 20 or it's 5,000.
Come on, 20,000.
You might be the one that pulls it in. You never know. This could be the interview. But I feel like if it's like, even if it's one person that hears it, that it's worth doing. Yeah. Plus, I'd like to know more about you guys and where you come from as well and what your stories are. So give me a little bit of background on you. And then obviously with what's going on in today's culture and with race relations and stuff, I would like to talk about what your experiences have been in regards to that as well.
Yeah. Sure. I'm Vernon, and born and raised Memphis, Tennessee. Very simple, nothing special. I didn't move all over the place. My parents were actually educators. They're retired. My dad's fake retired. That's another story for another day, because he works at Home Depot. But I love it. Get free lawnmowers and stuff. Whenever I can. But
I want a free lawnmower. I don't even have a lawn.
We'll talk about it. Don't be snitching on here.
My dad works for John Deere, and I don't even have a free lawnmower. Just kidding.
Born and raised in Memphis. My parents, they've been married for 34 years. It'll be this year, and it's just I would say I'm the oldest of two. Me and my brother, my brother now lives in Albany, New York. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I came to Nashville to go to school. I just went to TSU. Went to TSU, had a band scholarship, played tuba. To answer your question, no, I did not play piccolo. I'm 6'4". It would look weird if I did that. But
if that was in your heart at any point, by all means, if you still want to be a piccolo player, you do it.
It can happen. It's an easy instrument to carry around. That would be great. But no, I would say just my experiences, like as being a black man in America, just growing up with my parents, and as nice and as civil as they are. They had to have those conversations with my brother now. They had to let us know, hey, I know you're going out with some friends, or I know you're just going to the movies, but keep in mind there are people that look at you a certain way. There are people that aren't going to like you simply because of the color of your skin. And as a young man, it's like I understood that, but I never truly experienced it. And growing up, man, it was, I saw some things, but it never just hit me. Because, as a kid in Memphis, you go to the Civil Rights Museum every year. Martin Luther King Day, you're at the Civil Rights Museum. And you see that all the time, and it's almost ingrained in you. But I think the most of the time whenever I felt true oppression or had things happen was in my 20s when I lived here, living here in Nashville. And there were some things that I just hated to happen. There were times when I would drive in Franklin or drive in Brentwood and get pulled over, and they would ask, why are you here? I have a cousin that lives there, and he had a big house, nice neighborhood, and I was literally just going to wash clothes because I'm living on campus, I'm in college, and he said, yeah, come and wash clothes. And I got pulled over, and the police officer said, well, somebody said that you were driving around in a stolen car. I was like, how do you know this car is stolen? It was like, first off, it's not. And secondly, no, I'm just going to my cousin's house. And, sometime I would give it the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, no, this can't be, that just can't be true. And I've had that. That's just one of many experiences that I've had, and that's just with police officers. There used to be this place downtown called Paradise Park, and my friends and I, we would go there. They had a pool table in the back, and nobody was there. We went and we put some quarters in. We're playing pool, and these three guys came out of nowhere and said, "Hey, this is our table," and we're like, "No, we're playing pool. We put our 4 quarters in here that we had to scoundrels, find out of nowhere, and we're playing pool." And so the guy's like, "No, this is our table." So the guy takes some of the balls and puts them in the hole. So we're mad, and what happens when you're 19 years old? You end up getting in a fight. And so, can you tell me which set of boys that they kicked out of Paradise Park? They kicked us out, and it was the thing. I was like, wow, that's blatant racism, and it wasn't a thing where I was like, okay, I'm gonna burn this place down, or F this, bump that, or whatever. It wasn't the case for me, but I was more saddened by just being singled out just for being me. But now that I'm in my 30s, I feel like I have more of a vision for it, and I constantly want to challenge people. I want to talk about it, especially to those people that are just stuck in their own bubble. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. But it also saddens me to realize that there are a lot of people that will not have that conversation, will not get out of that bubble, especially with everything that's been going on. And I feel like, and please keep in mind, this isn't anything that's new.
Right.
It's just that it's out there more. We have social media where we can voice our opinions, and everyone has an opinion. And everybody's relative to their story, but you never really understand what's beneath the surface if you don't have a conversation.
Right. Okay, so tell us about your past or your.
So I grew up in Southern California.
Oh.
I lived there until I was 16. Then we moved to Georgia, and I finished high school there, graduated college in Georgia, and then moved up here to Tennessee. And I think, for me, my experience with racism has not been as blatant as Vernon's has. Mine has been quite a bit more on the side of microaggressions, where, because I grew up in California and because I talk the way that I talk, when I moved to Georgia, I was constantly told that I talk like a white girl. Mm-hmm. That, like, there was just, I wasn't black enough for the black people, but I was still too black for the white people. And like, my best friend in high school, when I moved to Georgia, she also was from California, and another black girl. So we kind of connected on that level. But I've been experiencing that my entire life because I don't really use slang, and because I talk more proper, and because I don't sound like Southern, or whatever the case, like whatever the stereotypical black person, I guess, sounds like. I've been constantly told that I sound like a white person, or, oh, you're not that black, or you're not, just different things. And it's like, it's been an experience, like something that I've experienced since I moved to the South, and it was so totally different because in California, in Oceanside, where I grew up, all the black people sounded like me, and there was not ever, and it's very culturally diverse, and so I hadn't actually experienced anything like this until I moved to the South. And it's just so, like, there's a very clear difference in the way of thinking when you come into like the Bible Belt and the place, like, where it's like, okay, they physically held slaves here, and so it's like right. The way that it's ingrained in the history of a southern state is just so different than being on the West Coast. And yeah. I think being a black woman working in the workplace, where most workplaces are predominantly white, like, anytime that my hair was different, like if I came in with my hair curly like it is today, but then a couple days later I had like long braids, I would get like, oh, your hair grew so fast, or and it's like, it's those things that it's like, culturally, like, I know that my hair didn't grow this fast. Mm-hmm. I know that these are extensions, like, this is not my, like, it's synthetic hair. I know that that, but it's like, the act of saying something like that, it's a microaggression. Like, it's something like, it's not blatantly like outright like racist, but it's saying something that is specific to my culture in a way that's like jokingly, and it's just, even now, like, the only reason that my hair is curly right now is because we've been in quarantine, and I just decided, like, I'm gonna embrace the curls, but, like, it's a real thing, like, straightening, being a black woman with natural hair, and you feel like, okay, I have to straighten my hair, because if I don't, then it's gonna be like, oh, your hair is so curly, it's so cool, how did you get your hair to do that? And it's like, nobody asks a white person with naturally curly hair how they got their hair to be curly. Like, nobody does that. It's just so interesting that it's like, for whatever reason, like, our hair is cool and it's different, and it's, how did you do that? I'm like, water and curling mustard. Like, it's not some big like secret, but it's just that's been my experience, and people kind of like, I don't know, I've never been pulled over because I'm black that I know of, but I have had that fear of being pulled over while black. Like, I've been pulled over by plenty of police officers. I got pulled over on the back road in Dixon, Tennessee, and I was like, I'm on the way to church, but if I don't make it there, like, I don't know what kind of person this is. And when you're in, like, a back road town, you know what I mean? Right. Like, it's like, those are smaller towns, and it's like, that's a real fear that you have being a black person, and it's not because of something that I've made up in my head. It's because of things that I've seen and things that I know that like people I know have gone through, and so yeah, I think for me that's like, it's just been like a series of just microaggressions and kind of like trying to not be so black that it makes people uncomfortable. And I think that I've been, over the years, I've done myself a disservice of shying away from who I am and not, and we talked about. And
how do you know who you are exactly if you're constantly suppressing who you think you are, who you think you have to be? Like, how do you express yourself into, like, this is really me?
And that's, well, I think, quite honestly, like, it's very new for me. It's a very fresh, like, rediscovering. And I think a lot of that has actually come out of quarantine and being home and, like, seeing a lot of things and not having to be, like, in this, like, not be this version of myself that I've kind of created for the outside world to keep people comfortable. And, like, whereas I don't normally post anything on social media. I'm not a very social media, like, person anyway. Like, I'm on it. I look at things, but I don't really post. And I think that I've been posting and sharing and doing these things because I'm tired of, like, feeling like I can be the black person where my white friends feel comfortable saying certain things or making certain jokes because I'm not that kind of black person, you know?
Right.
And I was talking to Vernon about that, and I'm like, I'm just tired of feeling like I'm, like, a safe space for my white friends to be secret, like, closeted racist people. Not all of them are like that, but I did grow up, like, I remember my freshman year of college being, I hung out with mostly white people because that's just what I was used to growing up in California, and that's just kind of what happened. My roommates were all white, and so we went to there was, like, a little plaza that had different, like, bars and things like that, and, you know, you go out to dance and stuff. And I remember I lived in the athletic dorm, and so there was a lot of black football players on our team, and I remember there being a very specific dress code, and the dress code was definitely geared towards keeping black people, like, black men out. And so I remember going, like, to a club that was, like, mostly black people and seeing these football players dressed one way, and then going to these places that were closer to campus, safer to go to and from, because you didn't have to get in your car and drive. And, you know, if you're of age, if you're drinking, like, you don't have to get behind a wheel and put your life at risk to drive back to the dorms, where these places were right next to campus. You could walk there. If you wanted to drink, you could walk home safely and be fine. But I remember seeing them putting on Sperry's and khakis and button-down polo shirts and the polo hats and these things that they had to dress a very certain way in order to be welcomed into these places. And I remember when it got too black, like, all of a sudden, like, I mean, this is a real thing, like, music would change. The music would, like, the atmosphere would change. And I remember them holding lines, and for however long, they like, oh, we're full, like, you know, we just have to wait till more people leave. And they're holding lines because there's a group of black guys that are trying to get in. And it was all these bars and stuff that were right next to our dorms, where it was literally like a 3-minute walk. So you could safely get to and from. And now, literally, none of those places are open anymore because they had so many complaints against them for being, like, racist and for kicking people out and for starting things with black people so that they're not open anymore. But I just remember seeing that, and it was fine when I was with, like, my white friends, but if I ever go to this place with my black friends, like, I was part of, like, the line that was being held. Mm-hmm. And so it was just, I don't know, it's just these things that you don't fully, I was young, so, like, I'm not fully thinking about it because of that, but now, like, being in my 30s, like Vernon said, like, you look back and you think about these things that happened to you and these things that you experienced, and where back then I feel like I made excuses for people and it was like, oh, it's just because this, it's just because that, and now I'm like, no, like, this was a southeast Georgia, like, small college town with it was a predominantly white institution, like, it was like, quite honestly, they were just being racist, and that's just what it was. And I think, I don't know, now I'm tired of, like, seeing that. I'm tired of, like, seeing my white friends post black emojis. I'm like, you're not black. Like, you don't get to use the, like, and it's not even like the Black Lives Matter when they're posting each color emoji. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna post this black Santa Claus. Like, you're not, like, that's not okay. And those are those small things where it's like, you think, like, people have gotten so comfortable appropriating and doing these things that, like, they just think it's okay, and it's like, there's nothing wrong, I'm not doing anything that's racist. It's like, well, but you know how long it took Apple to give us black emojis? Like, those are not for you to just, usually, like, if I know that I'm the only black person in a text thread and I see somebody throw up a black thumbs up, I'm like, dude, I know that you're not, like, those things, it bothered me for so long and I never said anything. And so finally I was just like, I can't keep allowing myself to be that friend, that black friend that does not hold my non-people of color, like, friends. If I don't hold them accountable, like, who will? Right. If we're close and we have a relationship and I'm not holding you accountable, I am a part of the problem as well. And I was like, I can't keep being a part of the problem. I can't keep being mad behind closed doors but not saying something to you about it. And so I think now, like, I think we've just been through so much and, like, experienced so much, and I just, being a face or, you know, a part of a church that is also predominantly white, I don't want that. I didn't want that to hold me back from telling people, like, I'm a black person and I need you to see me as a black person. I need you to understand that there are things that I experience in life that you're not going to experience, and it's not okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think because of that, like, I just shied away from posting anything because I'm like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want to upset anybody. But at this point, I'm like, I mean, there's, at what cost, you know? Like, I can't be more worried about making my friends uncomfortable than I am about holding my friends accountable.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, we have to be uncomfortable. We have to have these conversations, and that's just what it's going to be. And if you don't want to have the conversation, that's okay. We don't have to be friends. Right. Like, and I maybe that sounds harsh, but it's like, if you're not willing to talk to me and be open to recognizing the things within yourself, then I don't. How do you say that we're friends and that you love me as a person when you love everything except for the parts of me that make you uncomfortable? Like, you have to love all of me. And that's like, when I posted that, my post on there, I see my blackness, because I don't want people to say I'm colorblind. I don't see color. I love you. Not, you know, I know you're black, but I don't even think about that. I need you to think about that.
Right.
I need you to think about the things that make me different from you, because the things that make me different from you in America make me a threat to some people and make people not like me. Not for anything other than because I walk down the street and I'm a black woman. You know what I mean? Like,
right. like, is it nice to be able to have somebody that you can talk about to these things, and like, do you guys, I mean, I assume you share the same opinion, and that I think it's awesome that you guys are being vocal now, and like, I've seen a lot of posts, and I don't remember exactly, I've read so much in the last week that I don't know who posted what, but I like I wouldn't say I like it, but like that white culture has accepted the music and the dancing and we will use the emojis when it's funny.
I feel like that was probably my post.
Okay, but then when it comes down to the hard conversations or the like Black Lives Matter support or being able to like talk, all of a sudden it's like, oh,
yeah,
we're silent and we're like not joking around anymore. And now all of a sudden we're just cut off and we're not talking anymore.
Yeah.
But in order to have those conversations, you have to, like, I would say it's okay for like a person like me to love parts of that culture, but also to like engage beyond that too.
Right. That's the thing. Sorry. That's part of it. It's like the appropriation and the liking of the music and the dance moves and all of these things. Like, I mean, even down to like gospel music. It's like, I mean, that's not specific to like, oh, but it's church. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many things from Black culture that are fetishized and like made to be like so cool, but we don't talk about the actual hardships that come with being Black. But it's like, but I like your music. I listen. I know every word to such and such rap song. Congratulations.
Or like one of my friends is Black, or I have a cousin, or
right.
I have
And it's like just that doesn't. But that does not mean like. And I've seen so many posts that say it's not enough to say you're not racist. Like, you have to be anti-racist. Like, you have to be against it in order to invoke change. Like, you can't just say, because there are things that you're benefiting from, and I think that's what people think, that it's like because they don't just outwardly like, I hate Black people, or I hate people of color, I don't like brown people, I don't like, you know, just because you're not saying those things, and just because you're not like openly saying like, oh, I'm not going to sit next to him because he's a Black man, that does not mean that you're not benefiting from the things that are ingrained in our country that make it so that you get ahead as a white person.
Right.
And this goes back to what we said earlier. Like, you know, I'm talking about having a lawnmower. I don't have a lawn. So it's just like somebody says, oh, I have a Black friend. Are you talking about them, about their Blackness? Like, are you having those conversations about what you dislike? Like, I've seen so many posts where people are saying, okay, how come the protests are like this? How come people are saying this, that, and the other? And so I would scroll down and I would only see white people. So I would comment and say, hey, have any of you asked your friends that are of color this question? Have any of you asked your friends that are of color what they think about this? And because it's not just a one type of person issue. You know, you at least ask the people that it's affecting. And I think that's the big divide about it. It's like, yeah, you can have those friends, you have those acquaintances that are different than you, but you never know what's going on behind the walls of their house until you ask them in. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's like Janée just attested to it. Like, yeah, she's had those people that are like, oh, you know, you're my Black friend, but talk to me. Like, ask me what I think about this.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's where we miss everything.
I think I've unintentionally been the token Black girl in a lot of friend groups, and I was that for a long time, but it was just because I'm an approachable Black person. I am non-threatening. I am, you know, and it's because I wear Vans and because I like different types of music and the things like, I mean, because we can connect on other like things that are not necessarily culturally Black because of how I was raised and what I grew up listening to, and like, I mean, it's just lifestyle is just very different on the West Coast, I think. And and so
I loved living in California.
I mean, it's great.
I was an Iowa girl, so you talk about small town. I didn't have any exposure to other cultures. I mean,
From
we had
cow tipping to surfing, huh?
That's actually really true. Except for I sucked at surfing, so it didn't happen with that. But like the school that I grew up in, I mean, I graduated with a class of 36, very small. We had one half Black child whose dad was not in the picture, and then we had 2 Korean children that were adopted by a white family. Literally, that was the only difference. And then we had Hispanics that would come and work in the fields, and then they would be in our ESL Spanish classes, but they'd shove them off in the corner, and we'd be like, oh my God, there's like a weird kid off in the corner, instead of integrating them with us.
Yeah.
So like that was my exposure to culture as far as like my town. Like my mom was a social worker, and she worked in a lot of like the neighboring cities. So she worked with low income, which then, so my exposure, and I love that my mom exposed me to other cultures, but it was also a lot of other cultures in a lower income and in a lower, their experiences were just very different. Yeah. And then my experience of it too was through the news. So there's nothing good on the news. Right. You don't see like anything good as far as, here's the criminal list of the night, and like everything of my being as a kid was that black men are they're all criminals. Yeah. And it took a lot of unlearning, like even when I first went to college, and like I knew like things were wrong. Like I read To Kill a Mockingbird as a kid, and I loved that. And that's, so the bus that I'm building is named Atticus, and it's after that. It has stuck with me my entire life. And then A Time to Kill came out, and like just the things of as a kid, I'm like, okay, there's something that is not like being discussed here. And I was obsessed with reading like National Geographic, so I was probably that white girl that would be like, oh my God, how did you get your hair curly? Or how, because I didn't see it, and I was obsessed with it, and I was like, I want to know all these things of why people are different than me, but to celebrate it versus being like, that's weird. But like living in Southern California, I loved it because it was like this whole eye-opener of like, there's a melting pot of people that can get along. There's still segregation. There's still a lot of like, people stick with their own and
that's
stuff
that's
too,
part of what I was listening to something talking about like redlining and like all these things where they basically like you just there's just so many different things, but like that is why it's so easy to pinpoint the like poor black neighborhoods and all these things in media, because it's like we're forced to stay in these neighborhoods. I mean, we have that like here in Nashville, like my good friend Meredith, like across the street from her, there was an older black lady that lived in this house. Gosh, how long do they say? I think like 30, 40 years. Yeah. She had lived in this house on the street across from them in East Nashville, but it was owned by a white family. And they never offered to sell it to her, like all these things, and then they decided they were going to sell it so that they could develop two little tall and skinny houses on that lot, and so she just got put out. And she had no option, nothing. And and it's but that is a reality, is like a lot of these, like growing up in life, like we have a lot of older seniors that like were not given the opportunity to buy homes. Like I was telling you before, I work with senior adults, and out of the 50 volunteers that are in our program, only 2 of them are white women. The rest are all older black women over 55 years old. And I remember we had I don't remember her name, but she came in and spoke to them talking about just like property taxes and different things and like liens that are put on their home. And like we have a granny, and we call them our grannies because they are foster grandparents, but that her husband passed away, but they had put a lien on his house. Like, because there are people that can get into your mail and take things, and they just put liens on your home, and if you don't pay them, when it comes time to sell them or you want to make money off them, you have this lien that you have to pay off that thing. And it's been on her home for, she doesn't even know how long, and she doesn't know how to deal with it, because she doesn't even know why it's there. But there are people out there that, like, intentionally take advantage of people that don't have the education on property taxes and property liens and things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of that is black adults that don't have the same access to getting that information as some senior white adults. And that's just senior citizens in general. Like, people are terrible people that
that's like after the tornado.
Yeah.
Oh,
after the tornado, you could see them. Like when I went and worked in North Nashville, I was like, why do you got a pair of khakis on and a polo.
And
like,
no gloves.
And
Like,
no gloves.
You're not here to help.
You are here to, like, basically be a wolf on somebody else's house.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a lot of fear in that, and it's what you said earlier kind of made me think about it. Like, you know, I'm able to mentor young kids and young men and women, and one thing that hits me all the time is that I am probably the only interaction to a black man, maybe black person, that a lot of these kids, especially at our church, have. Mm-hmm. Most of them, you know, probably they live all over, but there are some that I know for sure that maybe the only time they see somebody that looks like me is on the news or at an NFL game or somewhere else. Because, I mean, yeah, granted, I'm a big guy, 6'4", 300 pounds. Yeah, I get asked all the time, do I play football? And at first it used to be funny, you know, we go somewhere, we get some free food, free drinks. Exactly, you know, and it's rough because for a while, especially going back to my 20s, I felt like, dang, maybe that's the only thing I'm built for. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the only thing I can do. And now, you know, meeting so many people, I'm like, okay, why am I the only person of color that you know? Why am I the only person of color that you have interaction with? Because this is the thing. When you see somebody that looks like me on the news, you're probably like, oh, I wonder if Vernon does that. And sometimes I had that pressure. I just did it now. I said, hey, my parents are together. I know my parents are married. They're together. And sometimes I feel like I have to say that because I don't want you to be like, oh, well, he's probably a statistic that came out on the other side. Or, oh, he's from Memphis. It's rough over there.
Or you're like that recovering Christian that you were probably in jail at some point. Mm-hmm. Now you're like representing and working with youth. Like, I mean, and that is just it's a whole stereotype that is not even.
And like, I was raised by a single mom. And so that's something, I mean, because, and I did have a dad that sold drugs and was in and out of jail, and now I'm like, I mean, now he is on the up and up and is like a recovering Christian that is a believer and all these things, but it's hard for, and I don't know how much of that was of his own doing and how much of that was because of his environment and because of circumstance.
Right.
You know, and it's hard to know those things when somebody's not around, but it's also, it's just, I mean, it's a part of what happens in our culture because black men get put in jail and get, I mean, they're just targeted, and it sucks.
Which was not something that I really paid much attention to until, like, I took the racial reconciliation class.
Yeah.
And the first night I was there, I was like, oh, these guys are really angry. And I mean, I've been interested in race and interested in cultures, like, for a long time, but I never really thought of systemic racism. Like, I was like, oh, there's definitely racism and stuff, but like the redlining or like the, you
have like segregated schools and neighborhoods and like places where it's like, we were talking about that and it's like, people were like, well, you know, we abolished slavery and desegregated these things and blah, blah, and it's like, yeah, the laws changed, but people did not. And it is not just about the law. It is not, because it's like, there are laws in place that are supposed to protect us, technically, but it's about the heart of people. And if you still, and I sent a text yesterday too, it was a group text, but I said, if there are still people that exist to tear down people of color, there will still be division. There's never going to be healing if people do not heal within themselves. And I think that's really the main thing, is that, like, there has to be a heart change. There has to be a fundamentally, like, intentional change of heart in somebody in order for these things to stop. Because there are just so many people in the world that do truly see themselves as superior because they are white. Right. Because they have access to things. I'm like, there are still neighborhoods where black people, like a black family moves in, and then it's like they're almost forced out and shunned, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna move. There are still schools that, like, if a black, like, you see like a couple of black families, but their kids are not being assimilated and integrated into this environment. They are being treated differently, and so it's like, what's the point? Like, it's like people, there are so many people out there like, well, if they just would do better for themselves and try harder for themselves and do this and do that, and it's like, but when we try, we're still being shut out and separated and told that we can't do something or we're not good enough, or that we're going to taint the image of this thing over here because now we've got the black family in our school. Oh, great. This is not what I'm not paying these property taxes and paying this tuition so that I can have influence from this terrible black family for my kid. Like, and it's just, that's still so real. And there's like this graph, like it was almost like like the food pyramid, but it was like overt racism and covert racism, and like all these things that happen. It's like, yeah, you have like white supremacist alt-right groups that are just like in your face about it, but then you have all of these other small things that people do that are acceptable in society.
Yeah. But they'll say we're not racist.
Right.
I'm not racist.
Yeah, like
really?
it's like when we go to certain place. Like I remember the last time we went to Bob's Steakhouse, which is a nice restaurant here. My family was me, my mom, my dad, Janée, my aunt, and we're having a good time. And as we're leaving, it's just a lot of white people in the restaurant just looking at us like we don't belong. I'm like,
it's like,
we got a little money,
if
okay?
we can pay the bill, we belong. It's
exactly.
fine. And that's also part of it. It's like you go into certain, I mean, we went on to neighborhood tap room and just knew that we were going to be the only black people in there. And it's just like, and you have to like prepare yourself, and you have to kind of gear yourself up to walk in because you know you're going to get looked at.
Right. And
it's like the only other black people that you see are people that are working there.
So then do you also get do you ever get asked, like, why don't you go to places that are more black? Like, I know when I did the racial reconciliation class, that was a big thing because people were like, well, why are you going to a church that's not... Like, there are black churches and there are black neighborhoods.
And if I'm being real, we talked about this too. Because of... And I don't know, I don't want to say this and it come across the wrong way because I'm not... okay, basically... In black culture, we tend to be a little bit judgmental of new people. Black church, because it's been years and years, a lot of people that like grow up in certain churches and go to these churches, and you have a new person. And it's not across the board, because like my sister works and she's a pastor at a church in New York, and we went, and it was totally different, and we felt
family.
It was like it felt like our church here where everybody was welcoming you, and but it's not like that across the board. And there are certain things like where the way that I talk, like I said, like there are some people that just are like, you're not black enough for me. You talk like this, you're trying to be white, you're trying to be this, and it's like that's not the case. I talk like where I grew up, and I didn't move to but even still, like my friends from California say that I sound Southern now. So and it's so funny because I'm like, I don't feel like I do, but I'm sure there are certain things that I say that sound Southern. And so it's just y'all.
She says y'all.
I do say y'all.
She says, I'm like,
say y'all.
Yes. She likes grits. It's great.
But I grew up eating grits. That's not
with butter or with cheese?
Both. What?
Yeah.
Butter and
I like butter, cheese, jalapenos.
Yeah. My sister puts sugar in her grits.
Sorry.
She does sugar and butter.
That's how I grew up in Iowa. Was sugar on grits.
She does sugar and butter, and then she also eats cream of wheat, and I can't.
Yes, cream of wheat. That was good.
Maybe now in my older age I might like it, but I did not as a kid. I was like, this is gross. Get this porridge away from me. I don't want it.
Porridge.
But no, I think it's. I was talking about this. I felt like we never felt not welcome where we're at now with church.
That's true.
And we always joke about it. I was like, we were like one of like 5 chocolate chips in this big old bowl of vanilla ice cream, but that's okay. Like, and now to see how far we've come from when we started going there to where they're at now. And I remember getting excited every time that I would see another like black person. Every time I was at a different campus singing, like I'd be like, oh, I would text them. I'm like, there's another black family at such and such campus, and I'd be so excited about it because I'm like, that's so important to see that and to see that we're growing and that we're welcoming. And I'm like, if that means that we get to be some of the, you know, like to be at the forefront of seeing that and to like get to witness that change, like that's fine.
Yeah.
Because we, like, I mean, nobody tried to pretend like we were not black. You know what I mean? Like nobody tried to pretend like we weren't different. And I think that was also part of it. Like it was like in spite of, we were welcomed and it was just comfortable. I think it immediately, like we just felt welcomed and comfortable. And I think that is what's important when you're looking for a church home. Like it's like if you're basing your church only on what everybody looks like, you're not going to, you'll be hard pressed to open yourself to like a real journey. And that's not, it's like, I mean, if that is, maybe that sounds unkind, but I feel like it's just because this is where I was at in my spiritual walk. Like I was like, this was just enough for me to feel comfortable and to dip my toe, because like I grew up a believer, but we did not grow up going to church every week. I was a single mom of 3. It was, I mean, she worked 2 jobs most of her life. Like it's hard to wrangle 3 kids, let alone like take them all to church and get them ready. And like we did go every now and then, but so for me in my walk and in my faith walk, like this is exactly like the level that I needed, and it's been great. And I think, and it was also a church that we could go to together because we had been dating for a year.
How did you guys meet?
Applebee's.
Okay.
He used
Was
to
it the
work
Bang Bang
there.
Shrimp? Love your Bang Bang Shrimp.
He used to work there, and
Okay.
we would go, me and some of my older friends, we would go after our Zumba class. It was actually, Dance Blast, because it was YMCA and we were not certified. So, but after our class, we would go, because it was half price abs, and he worked there, we met, he was being dumb. He had a girlfriend, said he didn't. So then I was like, you're a liar.
Yeah, I'm not perfect. Yeah.
It's true. He's better now.
Surprise.
See how it worked out. We got married. So, but I think meeting him, like, I will say, I think it was a God thing, because I kept on feeling like this tug to like check in and be like, hey, how's it going? I know you were stupid, but how are you? And then we hung out, and the rest is history, I guess. We started hanging back out in like February of 2014, and then officially started dating in April, and we've been together ever since. But yeah, like, I mean, he used to work for a place that he worked from like 6:30 to 2 or something like that on Sunday mornings. And so we didn't know. I was like, what? We literally sat, I was like, I want to start going to church. We need to start going to church. We need to find a church. And we were out for a friend's birthday, and we met, like, one of his coworkers. She was like, well, come to my church. We have a 4:30 and a 4:30 and 6:30 service. We were like, okay. And he went by himself the first week because I was at a Carrie Joe concert. So
you were at a
I was
concert?
busy. Carrie Joe.
Who's Carrie Joe?
She's a Christian artist.
Okay.
The Blessing. Yeah, have you heard that song?
Probably.
Okay, well.
I know a lot of songs, but I don't know who sings them.
Yeah, so she's...
Are you going to sing it? I mean, I'll let you
I did sing it.
if you want to.
I did sing it for church.
Okay.
I'm not going to sing it right now, though. So anyway, so I was at a concert for her, and then the next week we went. But he was like texting me the whole time, they have such cool lights, the worship is so great, wow, everybody's so nice. I'm like, okay, great, we'll go. And it was nice because I did FCA, like I said, I grew up in Metro Atlanta. I went to finish high school in Marietta, Georgia.
Okay.
So my junior
That's basically where I've been staying is Canton.
Yeah, so I went there, and so like I did FCA, so all of the songs that I sang were definitely contemporary Christian songs, and like, so some of the songs we were doing at church, I was like, oh, I know this one. I listen to The Fish. I know this song. Like, you know, so I felt comfortable in that because music is how I connect, and so I immediately felt comfortable because I was like, they're singing songs that I know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I kind of talk in circles. I don't know.
No.
So how do you, what's your outlook for the future on race and on connection and on, do you see like with everything that's going on right now, like we went to the protest, I wouldn't call it a protest yesterday, it was a march, and it was freaking awesome. But just in general, like, do you think, especially with today's youth, you're working with youth, the rally march that was yesterday was hosted by youth, like, do you feel like there's just a lot of change that's, like, positive change coming? After
going to the Black Lives Matter march, I felt I did feel a sense of hope. And I say that because I spoke to my dad, and he told me, he said, son, in his deep dad voice, he said, son, when we marched, when we protested, when we rallied during the civil rights movement, it was to get to where we are now. And I never thought of that. It was so simple. I never thought like, oh wow, it was for the Civil Rights Act. It was for desegregation. It was for the integration of schools, libraries, water fountains, restrooms, whatever have you. It wasn't to take the racism out.
Right.
And now I feel like I'm marching for so that my son, my daughter, whoever comes in the future, we don't know yet.
I was like, what?
No, oh no, we don't know yet. No. No surprises here. We don't know yet. We don't know.
It's a hell of a way right now.
I was all like, congratulations!
It will be much longer than 9 months.
Exactly, for sure.
We're not here yet.
For sure. But we're marching for them so that they don't have to experience what I've experienced. The microaggressions that Janée has experienced. And most definitely what my parents and grandparents didn't experience. And so I do feel that hope, because if you were at the march, you saw white people, you saw black people, you saw Hispanic people, you saw the police officers taking a knee with us, you saw the newscasters taking a knee with us in protest and solidarity of this. So I feel like because of social media, because of cameras, because of modern day technology, if it's used correctly, we're able to get this awareness out. We're able to get it right. Is everyone going to agree? No. But people are going to see. People are going to see everything that hasn't been put on front page. Everything that they don't understand is being put out. And a lot of people, and they've always said the revolution will not be televised. I feel like it just might. And I feel like it's happening before our eyes. So, especially after going to the march, I feel like I have a glimpse of hope. There are plenty of times where that hope goes down, because there are some very hard to like people out there, but we do love them. And so I think that's where I feel like the hope comes from the next generation. So I feel like we can get there. It's going to take a lot of work, but we can get there.
Yeah, I think my hope is just that it's not. I don't want this to be like a fad or a phase.
Right.
And I think because in the past it has been.
It's been something that's like at the forefront for a week, and then the next thing comes
like
in, the next thing comes in.
But I've seen so many, and I think, and I told him, being real, I was saying, like, it has to be non-people of color that are angry. It has to be more people like you that are asking questions and standing up for the inequities and inequalities against people of color, because a lot of times when a bunch of black people get mad, it's a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have angry white people that are saying this isn't right, that's actually what tends to invoke change in America and our culture, and that's just what it is. It's not an event. I mean, I pray that like that it doesn't stay that way, but for now it's like we need, like, I can't be the one to educate you. Like, I can't be the one that tells you how to work on the things in your heart or to fight against these things. And I think he's better than me, because if I'm being totally real, like, I've found myself being very frustrated with, they're not friends, I mean, they're white Facebook friends or Instagram friends that we don't talk. Mm-hmm. And then they send us a message, and it's like, hey, I can't imagine what you're going through, but how can you tell me how to be, like, what can I do? And it's like, I don't...
Like, you have a guidebook that says,
right.
here's
and
the,
I mean,
I've
had to have people pray about that, because I was like, I feel this weight to, like, know and have all the answers, but I was like, but I am not actively researching how to be a better white person. Like, I don't, I don't want that to sound cruel, but it's like, I'm not actively researching, like, how to fight racism, you know what I mean, or how to, like, the whole book about, what's it called,
not white privilege. It's called something, I don't even know. But there's just books, like, I'm not reading those books. I'm not doing that research. I'm not listening to the same podcasts that are geared towards anti-racism. I'm just not. I don't have those resources for people. And I think it's like people say, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you to do. And the only thing I can say is, like, you having these, like, it's one thing to sit down and want to have a conversation, but when you're just asking me to give you resources on how to check your heart and to check, like, your privilege, like, I don't have it. I don't have those resources. There's an
awesome thing. It's called Google.
Yeah, no, we had a friend that literally printed that over me and was like, don't be afraid to tell somebody to Google it.
Yeah.
Like, and I think because it's like, I don't want to come across as insensitive, and I don't want to come across like I don't care. And it's like, I understand, I see your heart in this. I see that you want to know more, but step one, take the initiative.
Yeah.
Take it upon yourself to educate yourself, just the same as you would if you wanted to learn a new craft or a new skill. Like, you're not going to sit around and be like, hi, like, it's one thing to seek guidance. Like, if I wanted to learn more about photography, it's one thing to seek guidance from you because you know about photography. And I'm like, hey, like, could you, I've looked up this, and this. I've seen that this is a camera. Like, but what's a good camera? But I'm not going to ask you to buy the camera for me. I'm not going to ask you to do the research on the cameras for me. I'm not going to ask you to send me a spreadsheet of everything that you've taken the time to learn and to hone as your craft. Like, if I'm wanting to learn something, I have to take the initiative to learn about those things.
Right.
And that is the same. Like, if you want to learn about how to not be racist and want to know about white supremacy and white privilege and all of these things that you've been benefiting from in your life, like, you have to take the initiative to educate yourself.
Right.
And to look to a black person to fix a problem that is oppressing them. How is that fair? Mm-hmm. Like, and so for me, I'm like, and I've ignored quite a few messages because I'm like, I can't respond to this and be kind. And I'm like, and also, like, we don't talk. I haven't heard from you in years. And all of a sudden now you want me to help you come up with, like, your study
your
guide.
action plan.
Yeah, like, and it's like, that's not how it works. That's not how the world works. And it's like, and maybe that's also probably part of the privilege, because it's like, there are some people that have the luxury of going through life and having people do things for them and not having to do the work and not having to figure it out because they just have access. It's like, I could be a C student and just barely skid by the seat of my pants in college, but then I have access to these networking events, and I have access to these connections because my parents have access to these connections. And so now I have the great job where I have a friend of color that did way better in school than me, but they don't have the same access that I do. And so I think that that's also part of the privilege. It's like, people sometimes are used to having access to things and not having to do the work. And it's like, I've had to do the work my whole life. I've had to prove myself, and I've had to do, like, the studying and to learn the skills, because that's just what you do.
Yeah.
Like, if you are intentional about something and you have a heart to learn about it, like, it is your responsibility to do it. Like, it's your responsibility to Google search. And if that just means Googling books about white privilege, podcasts about, like, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
And so I see the heart behind it and saying, like, I can't imagine what you're going through. I see your post. And there's not anything like, how are you? And I think that's what gets me, is that some of the messages, like, they've been like, I can't imagine what you're going through. Can you tell me how to do this? There's no how are you? How is this affecting you truly? Because it's like, we post some stuff, but we don't, I am not out there posting all of my feelings about everything. That's just not responsible.
Right.
And so it's like, but if you truly care for me as a person, then ask me how I'm doing. Ask us how we're doing before you ask me for a favor.
Right.
Like, that's just, it's just like, because it's like, the only reason you're reaching out is so that you can benefit something from this conversation. You're not reaching out to check in.
Right.
And so I think that that's been part of it. Like, and he's like, reach out to me, DM me if you want to have the conversation. I'm like, don't talk to me. Don't DM me. If you want to talk to me, like, we can, and if I see you, we'll talk. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, don't ask me how to fix your heart. I can't tell you how to fix your heart. I can't tell you how to undo the things that have been ingrained in you over the years. I don't know how to tell you how to do that. Because we've lived a very different experience, and I was brought up a very different way than you.
so I
And
can't.
if you did, this wouldn't be the problem.
Right.
Like, if you had the answer as to how to fix this whole
Right.
situation,
Do you think it-
by all means, share it with the rest of the world.
Right, that's what I'm
Most
saying. Like, do you think
definitely.
we'd be marching in protest like if we knew how to fix it? Like, we
Right.
don't know how to fix it. We don't know how to fix it, but we need you to be a part of it. Like, we know that we can't fix it on our own because we've seen that. And people are like, I don't know. It's just... And then, like, the constant, like, well, Martin Luther King did it this way and da-da-da. But I'm like, but it's over the years, like, people are just up in arms about any form of protest by a person of color.
Right.
Period. Like, there's
And
no
they
right
feel
way to
threatened
do it.
by
Yeah.
it.
Most
There's no right
definitely.
way to do it because then that means you have to address the things that are fundamentally, like, wrong in you.
Right.
And you have to admit that there is something that, like, you didn't actually earn this. You have to
Yeah.
admit that you already had a leg up in the world.
Well, and I think a lot of people, when the instant you say white privilege, they're like, whoa.
Like, I don't have any...
But I don't have money. I don't have it.
Well, right, and
I,
it's like, but because people see it as... They see it as, like, a material thing.
Yes.
Right.
And, like, it's not something that you can hold on to. It's not something that you
Yeah.
can see.
I
It
like
is a
that the girl
covert-
taught me to say white advantage. One of the girls
Yeah.
from the racial reconciliation,
good.
she's like, it's not even like, because when you say privilege, it makes it sound like you're
You've
You're
been
a
given
you've been
everything.
given it and
Yeah.
just handed it
Yeah.
a silver spoon, and it's like, it's
Yeah.
not.
Right.
It's not that.
It is that, but it's like the advantage. Like I've never had the color of my skin
Yeah.
take away something
Right.
from me, or like
Yeah.
have to work harder
Yeah.
because of
It's
it.
like-
Have
And
I
that's-
had
and
to
that's the
because I'm a
thing.
woman
Even
or
if we
something
were,
like
it's
that? Sure,
like
but
we
not
could
because
have
of the color of my
literally
skin.
across the board all of the same things. Like, if we are a poor, like an impoverished family, like if our household income's living right next door in the same neighborhood, the same poor neighborhood as this white family, and it's a 2-person home with 2 dogs, or 2 white people, and we work the same exact jobs and make the same exact income, and all of those things, they would still have an advantage over us. Because if something goes down in that neighborhood between those, it's like the likelihood of how that will turn out is going to be in their favor.
Yeah.
And so that is the privilege, is that, like, there is nothing, we may have all of the same things coming against us, but, like, there is still something that says in this world, and that's ingrained in people, that, like, white people are superior.
And that's the thing. I explain that to people all the time. Like when I mention white privilege, people will say, "Oh, well, I've worked hard all my life. I was poor. I picked myself up by my bootstraps." I said, "Listen, white privilege is not saying that you grew up without struggles. It's saying that the color of your skin is not one of those struggles." And that's the thing. Like it's not at all an insult. It's not at all a label. It is letting people know that, hey, because of the color of your skin, you have advantages in this world over a person of color. You are able to do certain things. Like, and it's simple when you think about it. Whenever you're doing anything, you have to put if you're white, black, Asian, Hispanic, and that's always a thing. I even growing up as a kid, I'm like, why does this matter? I'm taking a test. And I have to put if I'm black. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Which, ironically, thinking of that, and like how it shows, like inner city schools don't perform as well, or like if you have that information, why have you not fixed it?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's because they don't perform as well, because, and this was, I posted a video about this, but
It's not
talking
because
about,
you're not as smart or anything.
it's because we don't have the same access.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the same way we talked about earlier with the whole redlining thing, and it's because I watched this video and I was like, that's really informative. I'm going to repost this. I'm going to share this so other people have access. But it's because, you know, schools are funded by property taxes, and so if you have lower income, impoverished neighborhoods versus higher income, really well gated communities that are, you're funneling property taxes into the schools in those communities, and you have these ones over here, like the property taxes are lower because the houses are not of as much value. So of course you're not going to have the same access to books. Your schools are going to look like they're falling apart. You're going to have issues.
Right.
Because there's just not the same access if you're in a predominantly black neighborhood, and so it's just the whole
And you're not
idea that, like,
paying
we,
teachers as much, or, like,
Yeah.
and it's the idea that, like, black people have put themselves in this position, like, of like, we've done this to ourselves, and it's like, no, society has done this for centuries. Like, it's not a new
problem. It's
Right.
not, and and it's just one of those things where it's like, I always wonder, I'm like, if somebody were to come in that's white, like, am I making the same amount of money as the person that was in my position before me made? Am I, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, how do you know, how do I know if I am being valued at the same? And it's like, most of the time I know that I'm not. Like, you just know that you're not. And it sucks.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the hope is that something comes of this, and that people stay angry, and that people, like, it's that righteous anger, though. Not, like, just, I'm mad and I'm gonna go bust windows out, but, like, righteous anger to be, like, if you are Christian and you say that you believe in this and you believe in that and that you love all people, you have to love all people.
I feel like keep that same energy from when you go to Applebee's and you say, I'm going to write a bad Yelp review about the experience I've had with my mozzarella sticks. They weren't gooey enough when I opened them. Keep that same energy
For
when
people.
for people, for injustice, for racial divide.
Right.
Keep that same energy you have on that Yelp review about the hotel you stayed at and you were mad because your room service was late. Do that for the lives of people of color.
Right. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is that, like, while, and I hate that I have to explain this to people, it's like people being silent about everything except for property damage. And it's like, you didn't have anything to say, or you had questions to ask, and, well, it wasn't, I mean, how do we know about his past, and what do we know about this, and what do we know about his jail time, and blah, 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 and it's like,
They don't ask the white
but
man.
how dare you bust out 3 windows? And it's like, again, I do not condone, like, I'm not saying that, like, property damage is okay. I'm not saying that, because there are a
Not
lot
at
of
all.
things that, like, it sucks. Like, we, on Saturday, went to that rally. We marched. It was awesome. We left around 5 o'clock, got home around 5:30, and then literally within 40 minutes of being home, we're seeing messages and posts on Facebook about how angry people are about the property damage. And I literally watched the guy from Margaritaville carrying this big old wooden board and boarding up his windows, and I started crying. And I'm like, it's just not fair. Because I'm like, because it sucks, because these places have just gotten to be open. It sucks because it's like, what's the point of that? What's the point of busting out windows and just, like, there is no point to that. But then it also sucks because it takes away the coverage of what the good that we did, and the positivity and all of these cultures, and, like, coming together to march, and all of these people that showed up for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And now all people want to talk about is the damage that was done to downtown.
Right.
And so there was a lot of emotions there, and I was like, I can't watch this anymore. I can't keep on watching this, because I'm like, it just makes me mad, because I'm like, we were out for 2.5, 3 hours. And for what? For the news to cover until 10 o'clock all of these people damaging property.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, and now people are going to look at the black people and be like, this is why
So
you guys are where
photographic
you're
proof
at.
that it wasn't
Right.
black people.
And then it comes out later, you know, there's a lot, there was a lot of white people out there looting and doing terrible things, but it's like, but that is also that's also part of the root of being a black person, is that, you know, that, like, when something is supposed to be to benefit you and then something goes wrong, everybody is going to judge the black person. Yeah. Like, I talked about this before, like, I used to work at Starbucks in Green Hills, and I was working my shift, and I was the only black person in our store working that day.
Green Hills now.
Green
Keep
Hills
this
Mall.
in mind.
And it's a guy, black guy, went in and stole some bags from the Coach store. And he's running out, and you see him, and the first thing that goes to my mind was, why did he have to be black?
Right.
Because now, every person that's going to come in this store, the people that I'm taking orders are going to be looking at me. Like, I know him. Like that we're friends. I don't know this kid. But it's like, every time that a black person does something wrong in the media, it's like, across the board in the black community, now it's like, crap.
Yeah.
Crap.
And that's
Now
where
we
that's
have to hear about it.
Yeah, and that's where it goes back to full circle, because, like, that's why I tell, like you have people, white people that then they will see that, and they'll be like, like, I know one person, it could be me, it could be Janée, that looks like that. I wonder if they've done that before.
Yeah.
Or I wonder if that's them. And that's where we feel ostracized. It's like if you hear anytime it's a mass shooter and they're white, it's never the entire white community.
Yeah, it's not the white community.
It's that individual.
It's that he had this, and he went through this as a kid, and there's so many reasons that this could have happened. But it's like if a black person punches,
they're a gang member.
It doesn't even have to
they're a
be
thug.
the same. Like, I mean, like, I don't know of very many black mass shooters. If I'm being totally honest, I'm not. I mean, correct. I mean,
The
I don't
DC
know.
sniper. That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
but it's like
Or serial killers. But I mean, like, really, I think
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
There's probably more
in
than
my
one,
experience,
but-
I don't know. And if there's anybody out there that does know, please tell me, because I mean, I want to know. Like, I want to be educated in that sense.
Yeah.
But it's like there are just certain things. It's like if a black dude goes and holds up a freaking convenience store with a knife, all of a sudden the entire black community is a bunch of thugs and robbers, and they're trying to steal everything and blah blah blah. And it's like, did you hear about this? Did you hear? And we are generalized as a community every time somebody commits a crime, and I think that's why it's so easy to be like, well, black people just want to be ghetto, and they just want to be this, and they just want to be
this
that.
is why I would get looked at funny if I walked in that same store today. If I went to Green Hills today and I walked in that Coach, they would be like, "Oh, is he gonna run out with it?"
Have you ever felt that when you go shopping or
yeah.
go places? Do you feel
Neiman
followers?
Marcus, oh my goodness, I did not like my experience there because I've been followed around looking for a bow tie because I like bow ties, and it's just it's a bad experience. We've been in a grocery store and they have the self checkout, and we've had a not a security guard, a police officer stand on top of us while we're checking out our groceries. Like, I'm not gonna steal these oodles and noodles, man. Like, I just don't get
It's
it.
just like it's just one of those things where it's like the more like the time that you were spending profiling me and watching me, there could be 7 people that probably could walk up out of this store with like 3 things of bottles of nail polish and whatever else they want to steal that day. Like, but you're so busy looking at me, and I'm like, I've never stolen anything in my life.
Same.
I don't because I'm too terrified. Like, what do I look like stealing something? Like, that's just asking for it. Just same as when I got pulled over in Dixon. The guy told me that I was going like 20 miles over the speed limit on this back road. I was like, are you kidding me? Do you see me? You think that I would be dumb enough to drive 8, like, I don't know, the speed limit was like 50, and he was saying I was going like 77 or some outrageous thing. I'm like, do you think I would be dumb enough as a black girl on the back roads of freaking Dixon, Tennessee to be going that fast? Do you think that I would be stupid enough? But I can't say that to him.
Right.
And he was coming the opposite direction of me. So I'm like, how did you even clock me? Some people are like, state troopers have the things on their cars where they have the radar. I'm like, I don't know what he has. And I was not willing to go. I just went to court. I showed up. I got my little driver's class thing that I had to do. You know, I took the online class and it got taken off my record, and we're fine. Like, I don't have it on my record, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I would never, like, I don't have the privilege of standing up for myself in that situation.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to be like, I wasn't speeding. He was like, do you know how fast you're going? And I was like, well, I had my cruise control on and I was going downhill. Like, I'm literally driving through cruise control because I'm like, I'm not about to get pulled over for being dumb on a back road. Like, and I had it set to probably 5 miles over because I'm like,
You can't look obviously like you're trying to follow the law. That's what I always say. I'm like, it's like a 2 mile thing. But what's weird about that is like if I would have a cop behind me, in my head I'd be like, how can I get out of this ticket? How can I what can I say to get out of this ticket? Not what can I say to never get arrested or like go to jail or like be fearful of my life.
I was just like, I just have to be kind and just be like, I'm sorry, I'm on my way to church. I didn't know that I was going that. I was going downhill, so I don't know if maybe it sped up going downhill. I'm like, no, you know, you just you don't say
and
anything that's gonna
there's a
like,
recent video. It's an older white woman. The cop and please hear me. I love cops. I love law enforcement. And this is no stab at law enforcement. It's just another display of white privilege. It was an older white woman. The cop stops her and says, "Hey, just letting you know your tag has been expired for 6 months. I'm gonna write you up." And she's like, "No, you're not." And he's like, "No, I'm gonna write you up." And she doesn't want to sign it. She speeds off, and he has to chase her. He has to yank her out of the car. She's kicking him, everything. And I'm like, I would never have thought about doing that at all. I would have been like, officer, you were so right. That is on me. I deserve to pay everything. I would never. I would not have disagreed in any kind of way.
And I think, just you said that this is not a stab at law enforcement, and I think that's something that needs to be noted. I think it's so upsetting that these type of protests somehow always, like, it's the argument is that all cops' lives matter, blue lives matter, when it is when it's an officer of the law that commits a crime against an unarmed black man, that is a big deal. But it's not just cops.
Right.
It's literally white people committing crimes against unarmed black people, and it's an insane. Right. I mean, you have there's Trayvon Martin. There's just so many. Right. There's so many, and it's not just black people against police officers. That's not what it is at all. George Floyd, that incident, it is that. But I'm but Ahmaud Arbery, it is not that. It's just that there are so many, and people are you want to throw statistics out about police brutality against black people, and I'm but it's not just that. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about white brutality against people of color that are not armed, that are not, you know what I mean? Let's talk about what it really is about. It is about white supremacy. It is about white privilege. It is about alt-right people committing, that's what it's about. It's about the senseless murdering of people of color by non-people of color. It is not just, because people always want to say, the argument always wants to be, well, there's not all bad police. Nobody's saying that.
Yeah.
It's if that's going to be your focus, you're missing the point. Right. It's if that's your only argument, you're missing the point. It is so much bigger than that. It's just so much bigger than that. And I think when we try to narrow it down and make it Black Lives Against Police Brutality, it's not just that. That's an aspect of it, yes. But there are so many other things that are happening in this, and there are so many other cases that have happened that we may never even know about because it wasn't videotaped, and it wasn't, it's all we have is word of mouth, or all we have is somebody's testimony about it. It's just so much bigger than just cops, and it's not,
it's we respect, too. It's a judicial system.
Exactly. It's so much bigger than that. And it's I respect law enforcement. I have to respect law enforcement. I can't walk around spray painting when we did our protest, people were F12, which is basically F the police, and I think that's so ridiculous because it's not. I'm you literally it just didn't make any sense to me that they're bashing up police cars. I'm the Metro police officers are some of the kindest people.
I've never had a negative experience with a Nashville Metro police officer. Yeah. I love Nashville Metro.
And so it's the fact that we are taking away from their hard work, and maybe there have been experiences, but I've not. The way that they literally blocked off roads for us and made it so that we were safe. We had firefighters passing out things. We had police officers checking on people that were out there. They were out there to keep us safe. They were not, it's you see videos of police officers antagonizing protesters. That's not what happened here. And so the fact that after that rally and march, we decided that we were going to spray paint things. I'm you're writing all this stuff. I'm what? And it's the people that spray painted some of that stuff were not even black people. And that's another thing that just pissed me off because I'm we saw, it was there was these girls that were behind us, and I know that it was them because I remember seeing their signs, and they have these big bags with them, and it was Latinx for Black Lives. And I'm first of all, you were talking through half of the freaking rally right behind me, and I was so annoyed. But then they left early, and then all of a sudden we're in the march, and we see them standing by these spray paint, these walls and stuff on Bridgestone, and I'm why? Right. Why is that okay?
Yeah.
The officers, what happened to us rallying for a cause? You're creating this space in this environment of animosity, in this environment of anger, and you're just adding fuel. People are already mad. Why add property damage and all of these things to it, and why set that off and set
that like snowball effect into motion. Like, why? It's just so anyway. That was also another like trail off, but I just think it's important to know that it's not just about police brutality. It is about the system and our culture as a whole.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
there is so much work to be done beyond that, because people are like,
This is just something that you can visibly see.
yeah.
Like, this is just the police brutality in specific instances. Like, I have family that are police, and like, even after marching yesterday, I messaged every police officer that I know that I feel is my friend or family and be like, I want to check on how you are.
Right.
I want to check on how you are
Right.
too. Now, the instant that you showed, if I knew somebody who acted inappropriately in any way, shape, or form, I would want to call that out too.
Right.
But I want to make sure, like what you said, it's not like those are just things that you can visibly see.
Yeah.
Right.
This is something that is an example that shows this is a thing. Now let's also look at what's behind that.
And I think I've seen some tweets and stuff, and people are like, the system isn't working, and this is, and it's like, but it is. It's working how it was written to work by our white founding fathers. It was to protect them. It was never, I mean, there was still slaves when that was written, you know what I mean?
1776.
It was never written to protect black people.
Right. Well, I would
people
say,
of
like,
color.
even this just dawned on me. We the People did not include Black lives when
Right.
that was written.
That's
Right.
good.
So it is
Yeah.
like a
We were not citizens.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, we were property.
Right.
So we were not considered people. So when we were talking about the system and the justice system not working, it's working how it was intended to work when when it was set in motion. Like, I mean, and maybe some laws have changed, but it's still like it's not to protect our interests. It's not to protect us as a people. We were never supposed to be considered people.
Yeah.
Like, we were purchased and sold like cattle and animals. You know what I mean? Like, that's not, and I know that that's not my personal experience, and I'm not going to pretend like I know what it means to be enslaved. I would never ever pretend like I could ever understand that.
Right.
But the fact that, like, the matter of fact is, like, that we were not brought here to be citizens.
Right.
We were brought here to do work and to be sold off for money and auctioned. You know, like, we were not brought here to be American citizens. That is not why black people are in America today. That was never the intent. And so I think, like, it's like, but we're here now. Like, so I think now maybe it's probably time to, like, take a step back, check your heart, and decide how we're going to move forward from all of this, and, like, how we can come together and how we can be fully treated and fully embraced as part of America. Because it's like we are part of the hyphenated America. You know, it's like you have African American, Mexican American, Asian American, but when you say American, when you were to say I'm an American person, you're saying I'm a white person. There's no.
And I feel like that's something that needs to be put out to the forefront, because what you just said is that's the truth. Like, when people say I'm American, you think of, you know, a white person. You don't think of a black person. You don't think of a Hispanic person, because, you know, people will say, okay, he's African American. I've never been to Africa. I want to go.
I don't even know.
I would love to go.
I would love to do 23andMe. I could be Haitian.
We don't know. Which we love Haiti. That would be awesome.
I actually don't know. Like, I don't know, and that's also that's a whole other thing. Like, black people do not know their history and their lineage, and that's just a whole other freaking thing.
But when it comes to American history, like, I just don't get it. There's no doubt that black, white, Hispanic, we are all immigrants. Like, we are all immigrants. You're not a native North American. None of us are. And it's crazy. Like, if you're American, you're white. No one says, oh, you're European American. You're only European American if you have an accent.
You're from London. You're from Germany. Like,
that's European American.
Yeah.
But people don't realize that, like, if you're white, you're an immigrant as well. Like technically. And it's like, and that's why I don't like all the, go back to your country.
Like,
I don't know what country I'm from.
But I can tell you, like, I know you, when you do your little lineage and you had an Irish granny, like, that's where you're from. Y'all immigrated here. Because she wasn't, I mean, if she's not, like, I mean, you know where you're from. Right. And so it's like to say, go back to I'm like, I was born here just like you. Like, if you are 30 years old and you've lived in America your entire life, then I'm American. Like, I was born here just the same as you were. Right. But I'm like, but what about your great-grandparents and your great-great-grandparents? Like, how did your family get here?
Like, if you know, would you please let me know?
Right, because I'm like, quite honestly, the only way that you are fully American is if you trace back your roots and you go back to one of the Native American tribes that were here when it all started.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how else you can consider yourself Native, and they're oppressed too. Like, it's crazy. It's laughable. Yeah. And I think that's part of it. Like, I mean, it's just like there are some people that are so for their country and they're like, America, and I'm this, and this is, go back to whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really?
Yeah. And by all means, I'm very grateful that I am an American. I'm very grateful
most definitely.
to be
a lot of us, we could be in a lot of worse situations as far as where we're living and what we have and what we have access to. Trust me, like, this is, I mean, we are all privileged in that sense.
Right.
We definitely are, because we've done mission trips in Haiti, and we've seen that.
Yep.
We could be a lot worse off, and that is not to say, like, it's not to say that, like, we don't, we could have it a lot worse off, but this is still our home.
And it's the United States of America, which means we're supposed to be the best country in the entire world.
It's like, if your thought process is that the only way that we can be the best country in the entire world is that if there's only white people here, you're sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things that have been invented by people of color, of all nationalities, all these things that have been brought to America that you're benefiting from.
Right.
And so to say, like, there's a lot of freaking smart people that are not white that have invented a lot of really awesome things and reinvented and, like, upgraded and done all of this work to give us what we have now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you would be silly to think that America is what it is today solely because of white people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just so dumb. Like, that's just a terrible way of thinking. And it's a very closed-minded way of thinking. And there's just so much more to being American and being a part of the United States. I'm like, but this is my home just as much as it is anybody else's home.
There you go.
And I should feel welcome in my own home. I should feel safe in my own home, just the same as when I go into my physical home with those walls around me and I lock that deadbolt and I feel safe in my home. I should feel just as safe walking outside of the door. I shouldn't fear, like, I shouldn't have to send my husband a text message. It's like yesterday, like, I sent him a text, I'll read it. Because I didn't go to the march, and I didn't know what to expect, and I remember what happened on Saturday, and I was fearful, and I said, please be careful, keep an eye on your surroundings, make sure, and I said, make sure Mark and the crew are surrounding you, because he was with a lot of white people, and I said, after what happened last week, I'm nervous about what might happen this time. If things start to get rowdy at any point, I need you to promise me that you will leave. Do not leave alone. I need these people who you are with to protect you from potential harm. You are at a higher risk than the most of them. So please just be careful, stay safe, come home. I love you. I guarantee you that was not something like if a white husband was out, I don't feel like his white wife would have felt the need to send that text message. Mm. And it's just so real, like, that fear. And this is all it's such new territory for a lot of us as far as the marches and the protests and the things that we're doing now that are like, I mean, we've seen it, but I feel like this is the first time since I was like young, since in the 90s. Like, I mean, I was probably 3.
Yeah, because I was 4.
Yeah, I was probably
riots in '92.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I wasn't out there in the world. Like, I don't even
even realize the significance of what had happened at that time.
And so it's just one of those things where it's like you have to, like, I'm like, if you're with your white friends, make sure your white friends are with you. You know what I mean? Like, if you got to make sure that they're, like, I mean, if you're going to be the only one in this group, you need to make sure people are standing around you. Like, you need to make sure that, like, you're protected because you are at a higher risk of harm. If anything's going to go down, like, look at this man.
And all your friends probably are shorter than you, too, so you still stuck.
So it's just, I don't know. There's so many things that, I mean, I feel like we could talk on this subject forever and have so many thoughts on it, but I think
we have about 5 minutes. Is there anything that you want to kind of wrap up with, or any thoughts that I know this is a conversation we could sit here for hours upon hours and days, and I hope that this is a continued conversation. I don't want this to be like, hey, shut off, but as far as podcast goes, we're kind of...
I would say, for my white friends out there that are having the conversations with their black friends, that's step 1. But it's also about the conversations that you're having when your black friends aren't around. To make sure that if you are wanting to be held accountable, that you also take on the responsibility of holding your white family members and friends accountable too. Like, if you want to be about this and you want to spread awareness, like, you have to be willing to have the uncomfortable conversation with your other friends that may not agree. Like, I watched a video, Tasha Cobb posted a video of a girl that was literally on TikTok having an argument with her parents.
She's young too. She was only 13 or something.
And it was, I mean, but that's what you need. That's what we need. We need bravery like that, when you're not afraid of what might happen when you voice your opinion and when you hold somebody else accountable.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be brave and you have to be willing to stand up and, like, for real stand up and not, like, know your stuff, do your, like, educate yourself so that you can have these conversations, and so that when people are just trying to come at you with opinions, because that's what really it is, it's opinions most of the time when it comes to racism. It's like, oh, well, black people just want to do that. And she was like, okay, give me your statistics. And she's like, okay, well, this, and this. And it's like, be ready for that. Like, if you want to be, like, about it and you want to stand up and you want to fight and be anti-racism, then you got to be ready to have those uncomfortable conversations, because it is up to you as a white person to educate other white people. Because coming from us, it's I mean, it doesn't, quite honestly, I feel like people don't find it as credible.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
And it's silly. Because I'm like, if anybody knows about what it's like to be a black person in America, like, I do know. It's not something I'm making up. And so, I don't know. I just think, be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. Ask your black friends how they're doing. Ask them what they think, how they feel. And be willing to hear it and listen. Because it's not all going to be easy to hear. It's just not.
And also know that black people are just like white people in many senses. It's like, don't think that every black person lives in the ghetto, just like I shouldn't think that every white person lives in the fanciest neighborhood.
I've had to check in on that.
And that's something that I've had to learn myself. It's like, don't think that every black person is the guy that's robbing a convenience store, just like you don't think that every black person is LeBron James building schools and donating millions of dollars to inner city youth. You know, so let's take away the whole, that's just one of them. Don't do that.
Like, let's not generalize. Let's see the individual.
Yeah.
Just the same as media allows us to see the individual white person, like, see the individual black person and know that we're not all the same. All of our struggles are not the same. All of our, like, circumstances are not the same. Like, and we're not all out. Like, we're not all criminals. Like, we're not all trying to, like, tear down
predators.
The system and stuff. It's just, I mean, I don't know.
Predators, yeah.
It's just, I just think, yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just be willing to
be open for hard conversations and be open to change and be willing to accept and see the faults within you. Just the same as I have to be willing to accept and see the faults within me. Like, I know there are things about me that, like, I've probably said that's like, oh, that's a white person thing, or that's a, you know, like, and I know I've said those things, and I've had to, like, even as simple as saying, like, when we're in the gym, and you say, like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm dying. No, you can't say those things. Like, so it's just, it's the small, like, take small steps. I guess the big picture, take small steps to better yourself, to say these things, and to, like, check yourself when you're saying something that is a generalization, when you are doing something that is, I mean, like I said, microaggression, or even just, like, an overtly, like, just prejudice thing. Like, just be willing to change.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that we're going to see any impact from what's going on right now. We have to be willing to change. All of us.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you.
This was beyond awesome. I have chills. I want to cry and I want to hug you.